I'm gonna reveal to you how easy it is when you have those weaknesses, and that history of imperialism and bringing foreign people, like, to make an environment inside a country that would enable taking it over from the inside. Britain, Britain, Britain. Where do we start? First of all, how do I even call you? Do I call you United Kingdom? England? Britannia? What other options are there, actually? To be honest, the whole island, Scotland, England, Ireland, in the same situation, to be honest. And I think England is even doing better than Ireland or Scotland. So Scotland has Hamza Yusuf, and then Ireland doesn't even believe in free speech anymore, and they talk about it in the parliament, about limiting free speech, and I don't know what happened with that, because I didn't check. But at least in England, in Britain, I don't know, you guys, why is it so complicated? At least in the English parliament in London, people still can say things like, hey, we can't have this assembly because of threats. So that's nice. It really reminds me the way people talked and how frequently, I don't know if it was frequent, but before Russia entered Ukraine, before the war started, there was comedians and people talking about it and criticizing the idea of going into Ukraine. What just happened? Something crashed. So before Russia went into war with Ukraine, there were a lot of voices in Russia that were saying that's a bad idea, let's not do that. And once the war started, they all had to flee. As someone who saw that happening in Russia, like how people were talking freely and criticizing the idea of going into Ukraine, just talking about it, just the fact that you can talk about it can give false sense of security that you might not really, you should not have. Anyway, we need to save Britain, because Britain is a democratic country. At least it used to. Sorry. But there is a lot to defend, okay? Let's start. All right, a little bit of history about how Britain got to this position to begin with. First thing is just a funny fact. Maybe the British people, the English people, are kind of used to having an elite that is of different culture and ethnicity than themselves, and they were like, whatever. If it was the French and the Romans before that were ruling London and, England, and you just adopted them and they became the elite and it was okay. Maybe now, the new elites are not too bad and they'd be you can adopt them. But I don't know, this time I have a feeling that it's not gonna go that nicely. I'm not sure how it was with the French and the Romans, but I can tell you for sure, the Islam is not fun at all. Another thing that Britain did is it gave up the control of the seas to the United States, which puts it in a position that is a lot less of a global power. And the third thing Britain did, it was imperialistic. And you can say a lot of things about, was it okay, was it not okay, having those colonies. Out of many colonizers, Britain was not that bad to have. But as a Jew, I can tell you that Britain did a lot to not help us when at the darkest hour. But it doesn't matter, because British values and Britain is something worth saving. But this is not why I'm bringing imperialism. But the reason I'm bringing imperialism is that because the Brits went into societies that were different, some of the people that they met there went back with them. And that created a special situation, because the people that Britain imported back then didn't necessarily represent the cultures that they came from. Let me just say it like that. All right? So you have a situation where Britain is not as strong as it used to be, British people or English people are kind of used to having elites that are from a different ethnicity or background than them. And we have a situation where you suddenly have people coming from overseas, which I guess ties up with we're used to having an elite that is not our own anyway. That was a history recap. The next thing I want to talk about is the UK's unique weaknesses. And I'm going to start with something a bit more funny, maybe. You guys have terrible food. And I remember the first time I was in Britain, I was in England. In London, I was like 13, and the food was so bad. And then the next time I came, the food was amazing. And I was like, yeah, immigrants are amazing. You guys need those. They bring great food with them. So I understand the feeling of thinking that you'd want to have them. Okay, so that's weakness number one. I know it's a funny one. Second thing is the police, all right? You know what? Maybe before I talk about the police, I'll talk about the English-speaking situation. English speakers tend to only speak English. And when you don't speak another language, you're limited to your one culture. So when you have even, speak two languages, and you're exposed to another culture, then you know that sometimes different cultures have completely different ways of thinking. And the way that people express themselves in one language is so different from the way that people express themselves in another language. And that discrepancy can be immense, So the cultural difference, like the way it's reflected in language, can be incredible. So just not having that in mind, because if you grow up with one language, one culture, or even multicultural but one language, then there's this thing that it limits your understanding, maybe it limits your perspective, and it fundamentally limits your ability to know that not all cultures are the same. Now let's talk about the police, because that's heavier, all right? So this policy of having a police. So what is the police, all right? The police, out of all the governing, so you have a jurisdiction, you have the academia, and you have parliament, and you have the enforcement, you have the police. The police are actually the people. It's like your gut, And the people of England, they're like listening to them, it's like listening to your gut. So you have a gut feeling that something is wrong. And those who are responsible to like being the first to notice that something is wrong is actually the people. And when the academia comes and like through rationality, it's like your brain trying to tell your stomach, hey, you don't know when you're hungry. I know when you're hungry. And by the way, I'm pretty sure like the stomach, like the digestive system has its own neurons. It's a separate system. So just like we have a gut feeling, and that gut feeling is way more smart than our brain, that's the boots on the ground. That's the people on the ground. And that's the real representative of the people. And what happened is that the police doesn't have its power. It doesn't have the ability to enforce what it's supposed to enforce, because the weapons in Britain from the police were taken away. The army is another issue, which I'm not going to touch right now. But the police is like the most basic thing. And when the police doesn't have a way to stop crime, and you are a patriot, and you are serving in the police, and you want to protect your neighborhood, and you don't have the means to do that, you're going to go crazy. So what people do, they quit. Usually they quit. So the patriots, right, quit the police because they see crime and they have nothing to do with it. So who do you have left? You have the enablers, those who are like, you know what, I'm going to come 9 to 5, just get my money, and whatever happens, I'm just going to close my eyes and that's it. That's one. You have those who are, no, I'm going to stay, it's important. Those are very, very few. Don't count on them to be many of them. And they're going to be pushed down, suppressed, like all the time. And then when you open your country to immigrants, you have those who don't care that they don't have a power to stop crime because they look at crime in your neighborhood and they don't like you. So they're happy to watch crime, you know? There are those police people who might be having like, they don't even have to be immigrants, right? They could be like communists, anarchists, all kind of people who are like, hey, I can go work as a policeman. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to power, like nobody expects anything of me because everybody knows at that point that there is nothing that the police can do about anything. So I'll just watch the country burn, bring some popcorn, you know, pretend to do my job. But in reality, like, I'll have fun from it. And that's like, that's scary. When you have that kind of people in the police, because the police doesn't have power to do what it's supposed to do. And you drive out all the good people because they go crazy. And you bring all the anarchists and the crazy people. And you have the enablers who are like, whatever. And then you have those who really, really try to fight the system and are saints, basically. But they are a minority that is being pushed down. So those are the three weaknesses that are unique, I think, to Britain, which is police without force, bad food. That made me think, personally, that immigrants are like, yay, you should have as many as possible of them. And the third thing is that you guys only speak English and you have and that limits your understanding in a way of what's possible. I'm gonna reveal to you how easy it is when you have those weaknesses, you know, and that history of imperialism and bringing foreign people, like how easy it is to make an environment inside a country, a foreign country, that would enable taking it over from the inside. So the first place that is infiltrated is the academy, because you bring the best people out, you know, from India, from whatever places, and then there are two things that happen. You bring really good people, you know, and then you get an impression that, wow, that's amazing, we should have more of those. And two, you bring smart people that have an agenda. And these smart people with agenda open the door to other smart people with agenda that can, now they have access to professors, to the elite in general, and the elite, you know, and I'm going to talk like in academia, it affects a lot. Law school, right? If you get law school infiltrated, you get the jurisdiction, the jury. Why is it so hard to speak English? The jury, whatever, the judges. Those are people who become judges. And so you get the academia and you get the judgment system. That's the first system to fall. And what does the judgment system do? It's that it starts enforcing law in a way that weakens the country. And it does that in several ways. First of all, even if you don't even have to have all the jury infiltrated, right? You just want to have one person that knows all the dirt about all the other people and is willing to use all those, you know, by any means necessary to promote his agenda. And sometimes that's blackmailing, sometimes it's, you know, bribe, and sometimes it's just, you know, one of the benefits for people with agendas, that the academia is a place that many people there, students included, they didn't live in the real world yet, students, especially if they didn't serve in the military before. So they have no idea how the real world works. And sometimes you have professors that all they've done all their lives was being in the academia, and they also don't know how the real world works. And then they think that they are the brain that can tell the stomach when it's hungry and when it's not hungry. And they are relatively easily persuaded by fancy words and ideas that sound nice, but are wrong and unrealistic, but they don't know because they don't know reality. They don't understand reality. They are not the boots on the ground. And they are, they like talking about things that sound nice. Multiculturalism sounds amazing, sounds beautiful. Diversity sounds so nice. Equity, let's all be equal and nobody's going to be hungry. And then, who is going to think it's a good idea? People who have no idea how life works. These kind of people. So, yeah. So that's the easiest place to infiltrate. And then if you infiltrate law school, then you're going to have the lawyers and then you're going to have the jurisdictional system as well. And then from there, the next is the elite in general and the media. Because what's happening is that every politician that doesn't act the way you want them to act, it doesn't fit your agenda, you can just start applying lawsuits on them, and then somebody who was ever had to go through a process in the jurisdictional process, they would know that it's hell. You're not guilty, you're guilty, you're not guilty, even if you did nothing. It's complete, you can, somebody can sue for defamation or something, or whatever, and then you never said that, and you can prove you never said it, but just going through the process is torture. So, I don't know, I can, in Israel even, can think of several politicians and MPs that suddenly had a lot of lawsuits against them, a lot of things and then once they started speaking a little bit differently, all those lawsuits disappeared. Where did they go to? And people have very short memories, so they don't even notice. The media really exaggerates it as well. The media is another factor of the academia. You just infiltrate journalism, journal school and stuff like that. And you're like, hey, I'm from Afghanistan. I would know how to report on Afghanistan better than anyone else. So of course you should give me that position. And then you go and you can write whatever you want. You can rewrite the narrative completely. Who's going to check that the Afghan person is translating the Afghanic language true to its source? And not only true to its source, true to its real meaning. Because I know the Arab world, for example, uses a lot of euphemisms, says a lot of things in a very, very indirect way. And if you're not familiar with that culture, you're not going to understand that one person can tell you X and mean something that is completely opposite of what they're really saying. And they are looking at you like that, hoping that you would understand what they really mean when they say X. Because those are regimes of terrors. They cannot say things as they are. So sometimes you're like, hey, why did you say this and that? When you're my friend or whatever, are you stupid? What do you think? Why? So those things are not always translatable. And sometimes the people who do the job of reporting that don't translate it properly. And then you change the completely narrative. You create a new reality, a new world, just by the fact that the average one language speaking Brit or English person is, especially in the past, now it becomes more accessible, but especially in the past, there is no way. You just could have not known what's true. So you have to trust those people who you think are your friends, who present as your friends, but not all of them are your friends. So this is how easy it is to infiltrate the media and how easy it is to infiltrate law. And with those two, you start chasing politicians. And once the politician starts acting the way you want them to act, the media doesn't talk about it anymore. The accusations are being dropped. And would the public even notice that something changed, that the politician used to speak in one way, but now he speaks in a completely different way? And I know, I have in my back of my mind, personally, like MPs here in Israel, that exactly that happened to them. And now they speak, in a completely different manner, Maybe they still try to fight from the inside, but they cannot talk the way they talked before because their life is going to turn into hell. And what's more fun now is in the UK, it's even physical threats, it's real threats, it's life threats. It's like your family, your everything, they find ways to shut MPs up. And once they get the MPs can do actions that would cripple both the army and the police, which are like the gut, the people, those who are like, that's the hardest thing to penetrate, to trample, the people themselves. Because like there is this beautiful sentence, like there are some things that are so unrealistic that only an intellectual can believe them. And there is a real advantage for non-intellectuals, in the police and like in real life, that know reality, that have that understanding that every child has, hey, I don't think it's okay what you did. And then the academia comes and brainwashes us, like, you know what? Yes, but, like when we were in India or when we were in the Middle East, we went to that village and we shot people, so that person is from that village and now he's hitting you. When it comes to Britain, like, yeah, I have a lot to say about like things that Britain didn't do right, but the Middle East is, from the inside, I can tell you that that village probably planned to go and massacre all the Samaritans or all the Assyrians that live next to them, okay? And that's why the British police came inside. You don't know the real story. But it's easy to manipulate someone who doesn't know. So first is the academia, media, jury, and then you tortured your MPs that on average really want to represent the people, really care. You have to have nerves of steel to be an MP. And then from there, you cripple the army and the police. I'm not going to finish here. I'm going to say what to do, okay? Let's talk about what you can do as a citizen. First, the first thing that you have to reclaim is the gut, is the stomach, is what feeds the body, it's what keeps it alive. It's the police and the army. And I know a lot of Brits think, I don't want to go to the army, I don't want to go to the police. It does things that I disagree with. And I'm going to tell you, I did army service. Army service sucks. It's not fun at all. It's not. It's awful. It's hard. It's unrewarding. You're going to get criticism. And most of the time, you won't even know what you're doing. But what you're doing is important. And from the boots on the ground, you can start making demands to be armed, to have power, you are the ones, you're deciding in the demonstrations, you're the ones on the ground. You'll be like, hey, we're the police. With this, like, those demonstrations are dangerous. Stop it. And you're the police. You have that power. But for the people of Britannia to have that power again, you have to go and get recruited to the army to protect yourself and to the police. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's a sacrifice. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's a hard job. It's unrewarding, but it's something you have to do. So that's the first thing you have to do. Second thing is reclaim the academia and the media. Reclaim the media by talking. Talk to each other, talk, say, hey, there is a problem. Talk to your family, talk to your kids, talk to your friends. Don't shy away. You'd be surprised how many people agree with you, and you think you don't because the media was feeding you a certain narrative and you think that everybody thinks that way, but no, the media lies. Not everybody thinks that way. So you can fight the media just by talking. Talk, in real life. And everywhere, but in real life is super important. And when it comes to the academia, you can dry up the resources, don't attend, find an alternative education. Try to find those universities that did not fall into Qatari money. And the third thing is that with the parliament, with the MPs, give them the recognition and give them the power and give them the love that they need so they would be able to fight for you. So they would believe that not everything is dark and gloom and there is a point and there is a reason they're doing what they're doing. There are people who think about mentally might be those who want to and love their community, the country the most, and then they get lawsuits, they get criticized, everybody tries to bring them down, and then if they do something wrong, people bite into them. So show them love. They need that. They need that support. And that's it. That's all you can do right now. Obviously, there are other things you can do if things get worse, but I'm not going to say it on YouTube. Love, kisses, I believe in you. Stay strong. Britain is worth saving. Subscribe, comment, like.